Alrighty, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on Dot3D, hosted by point3D and DotProduct. We will be speaking about DotProduct, iOS, LiDAR, and changing landscape of handheld 3D scanning. A few notes just for y'all's sake. Your microphone will be muted, and if you have any questions, there will be a Q&A icon below. Feel free to answer or input your questions there, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. For those of you who are not familiar with point3D, we are a laser scanning technology and service company representing cutting edge companies like DotProduct. Our focus is 3D handheld terrestrial laser scanner systems, which both sell and support. Our customers come from various markets, including AEC, DoD, BIM, and industrial. We both sell and support laser scanning systems for our partners. On this webinar today, from point3D, myself, Joshua Barretta, sales manager, Greg Laws, principal, and Julie Smith, support manager and product specialist. I would like to turn the mic over to co-host Chris Ahern from DotProduct.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that introduction, and very happy to be here today talking to you all. Thank you, everybody who's on the line, about the launch of our new iteration of Dot3D in terms of the 6.0 version and some of the changes that are coming with that. So today we're going to be talking about 6.0 updates, focusing a bit on the iOS LiDAR, which is the newest in our product mix over the last few years. The new Dot3D PRIME, what's that mean? What's that all about? And the exciting changes to geospatial and GNSS capabilities in a variety of forms. So first, a little bit of background on us. So for those who are new to us, we are a handheld 3D scanning exclusively focused company. We've been in this business for over a decade with background in the worlds of terrestrial and larger scale tripod laser scanning, but with an exclusive focus on mobile technologies. We are headquartered here in Boston, Massachusetts, and also in Wiesbaden, Germany, where our software development is predominantly taking place. We have a worldwide network of resellers and software partners, and I certainly want to give a big thanks to point3D for hosting this session today. They really are excellent boots on the ground for us here in the United States, and I would highly recommend utilizing them as a direct contact for all things Dot3D for any of you looking for a hands-on reseller who has a good understanding of the technology and how it can fit into your business. We're a privately held company with investment from Intel, who is also a hardware partner of ours, as you'll see here today. So the webinar today, it's not about DotProduct, it's about Dot3D. So what is Dot3D? It is our flagship product, our professional 3D scanning application, delivering accurate color 3D point cloud data sets from a wide variety of platforms, as we'll discuss here today. It is the most capable mobile 3D capture app on the market, utilizing advanced targeting workflows, integration with other professional 3D hardware, as we'll be discussing extensively today, and an expansive internal feature set that continues to grow with updates like the one we're highlighting today. And how can Dot3D be deployed? So there's a wide range of options that we support, but they can really be separated into the two categories that you see here on the screen. So on the left side, we have iPhone or iPad Pro. These are devices with embedded LiDAR depth sensing technology in the back of the phone or tablet itself. We also support a wide range of Windows or Android deployments. And in that case, you are utilizing an external 3D camera, such as the DPI-X that you see here on the back of a Surface Pro tablet, or the Intel RealSense D455 or D456 that you see here attached to the back of an Android phone. These are two distinct options, given that the iPad and iPhone do not support the plugging in of external cameras, and the Windows and Android solutions do not have built-in 3D cameras. They each have their own pluses and minuses, and let's get into that now. So the iPhone and the iPad is particularly well suited for some of the obvious reasons, one being its built-in convenience. So, there's nothing more convenient than a 3D camera built into the phone that's already in your pocket or the tablet that's in your vehicle. It's also well suited for extra large scene sizes. So this is the nature of the iOS devices because we're able to leverage not only the built-in intelligent SLAM tracking that we have in Dot3D, but also the inertial tracking of the iOS device itself. So that allows for excellent tracking across very large scenes, even in challenging scenarios such as a wide open empty parking lot. It's particularly well suited for outdoor scanning, where not all of the Windows Android options, but some of them are challenged in terms of daylight capabilities. The iOS devices work great indoors or out. And this is the solution today that you will need to be operating on if you're going to be utilizing any external GNSS or RTK hardware, which is something that is launching here today with Dot3D 6.0. We may add options to take advantage of those sort of technologies on Windows and Android in the future, but for now, it should be operating from an iPhone or an iPad for that capability. Of course, the iPhone and the iPad is certainly a good option for budgetary constraints as well. Not only is it as you'll see in the next couple slides, an even lower cost version of the software on that platform in most cases, but it is something that you may already have in your pocket today, or it's relatively low investment, and that makes it a very scalable technology. So if you're looking to put 3D in a lot of people's pockets, a lot of users within a department or an organization, that's something we're really seeing a lot of expansion in terms of use cases with the iPhone and the iPad. That being said, we are still very, very excited and happy to be supporting and growing the hardware that we support on Windows and Android as well. We expect to see additional 3D cameras being supported in the future, so we're looking forward to that from some of our partners. But even today, there are definitely some use cases where this is certainly the best fit. So first and foremost, again, an obvious one, that would be if you have a Windows or Android preference or a necessity. So whether that's just a requirement of your organization, a personal preference, or if you just simply already have, a fleet of rugged Windows PCs or tablet PCs, I should say, and you want to turn those into 3D scanning kits, we have the tools you need to do so. So all the options at your disposal here. Another benefit of this platform is that the 3D cameras are indeed hot swappable. So you can, equip multiple different 3D cameras for different scenarios and plug them in and out as needed to use in different environments. So that's something that is unique to the Windows and Android-based Dot3D platforms. On that same note, this could be a better situation if you're going to be utilizing the extension pull kit or in general extending your camera into hard-to-reach spaces, which actually is relatively common in some of our applications, such as underground manholes and utilities, or documenting above ceiling areas. And that's just the nature of the technology on Windows and Android, where you can actually separate the 3D camera from the tablet or phone. So you can still see what you're doing on your tablet and have just the camera going into those hard to reach spaces. Obviously a little bit more challenging to do with just an iPhone, for example, because you wouldn't be able to see what you're doing if you send the iPhone all the way up there by itself. In general, there's a wider range of cameras on Windows and Android, everything from our most accurate indoor scanning devices on the DPI-X and the DPI-10 to our widest field of view outdoor capable cameras in the Intel RealSense D400 series. But in general, taking all of that into account, some of those cameras are our best for smaller scenes indoors. So while the iOS is certainly what we're going to lean towards for any outdoor or partially outdoor scanning that's going to be large scale, we may lean towards some of these Windows or Android kits if you're looking for the most discrete detail possible in an indoor setting. But in general, we produce excellent detailed color 3D, dense color 3D data sets across all platforms, and it does come down to a bit of personal preference in terms of how you deploy. No matter which Dot3D solution you're operating with, we certainly recommend some accessories and some additional hardware that can really help with your results. So it's important to note that while this can be a standalone solution in some scenarios, oftentimes it's augmentary or works really well hand in hand on certain jobs or certain scenarios with a lot of other 3D technology out there. So this covers everything from drones capturing, aerial 3D data of a much larger space. Then you can go in with your phone and Dot3D to capture the interior of a vehicle, the interior of a residence, under tree cover, the facade of a building. There's a lot of scenarios where the drone will be lacking, and these data sets can link right together very easily and kind of complete the package. Similarly, we, as I mentioned earlier, our founding background is from the world of terrestrial laser scanning. Our data sets we deliver are as comparable as possible, given the hardware in your hands, to what you get out of those technologies, and they work very, very well hand in hand. This is by no means a replacement for a terrestrial laser scanner in most cases, but it can work very well hand in hand in terms of capturing much larger facilities with a larger scale device. And then as needed for small spaces, documenting, filling gaps, etc., that's where Dot3D can fit in very nicely. Even when you are using Dot3D as a more or less standalone 3D capture tool, there are some other devices that can be extremely helpful with tying down the accuracy and quality of your scans, especially across larger scale scanning areas. And those are things like total stations, GNSS or RTK receivers, like we'll talk about today, or any measurement tool such as a laser disto or even a tape measure. Because with our targeting capabilities, you have the ability to reference surveyed in coordinates to targets, known measurements between targets, and all of these tools can complete the package very nicely. While technically all optional, it's just worth mentioning what options you do have at your disposal. Including on the downstream side of things, we play very nicely with a very wide range of not just CAD software, but 3D software in general, everything from virtual reality to 3D meshing, point cloud management, 2D and 3D CAD. There's a lot of ways you can go with this data if needed. We have those workflows built out for you. So where is Dot3D being deployed most successfully today? Well, this is certainly not an all-inclusive list. There's a wide spread list of where handheld 3D is making a really nice fit on professional use cases. But these are some of the ones that are gaining particular traction these days, especially with the release of our 5.0 and 6.0 larger scale iOS capable technology. So we're seeing a lot more surveying, both land surveying and building surveying, interior and exterior of buildings, and capturing larger scale spaces and surveying in targets to control and tie that data down using good surveying workflows. We're seeing more and more growth in the real estate world, and this is really about renovation and retrofit projects, but also general documentation and floor planning. So being able to really quickly and accurately and visually properly represent an entire space in 3D, create a BIM model or a 2D floor plan out of that. Public safety is certainly a big priority for us and something that is a really, really good fit for what we do. So this is everything from close quarters interior crime scenes, but more and more so these days also those larger scale crime and crash scenes, and in general incident documentation across the board is really being enabled by something that's so practical and so easily deployable and so fast, but also accurate and reliable. Construction and general utilities are a couple other big applications in terms of regular documentation of accurate 3D. And as you see here in the utility side, it's everything from manholes to trenches to roadways that are now being documented using our outdoor capable solutions, which include the Intel RealSense and the iOS LiDAR. And lastly, we have a great niche and growing pocket inside the shipbuilding world, given the nature of handheld 3D and the nature of ships. They need to be retrofit and repaired and documented regularly, and they involve a lot of close quarters, tight spaces that need to be documented quickly. So it's also a really great fit for Dot3D. So there's many more that could be added to this list, but we're here for all of your professional use cases that require accuracy and reliability. So with that introduction and overview of some of those logistical changes complete, we're going to move into the meat of the presentation here, where we talk about Dot3D 6.0, in particular, what's new and what's changing with this new 6.0 launch. So first off, the versions or the variants that are available to you are being modified a bit. So I want to take a minute just to digest this and help explain to you what's changing in terms of the names, the brand, and the feature set. So to really simplify what we see on screen here for those who are used to us, Dot3D Pro for iOS, so our iPad or iPhone-based version, our lower cost version of the Dot3D scanning software, we're dropping the for iOS part. So that is now Dot3D Pro. I apologize for any initial confusion that these changes may create, but we are doing this to simplify the messaging and the branding moving forward. And I do think that'll be the case in the long run. So the Dot3D Pro version includes all your scanning and editing and processing capabilities. All of the core functionality of Dot3D and all the professional functionality is included in there. But what it does not include is external hardware capabilities. So if you're utilizing an Intel Real Sensor, a DPI kit, or a Trimble DA2, or any of our other GNSS receivers that we'll be adding support for, that's where Dot3D PRIME comes in. So Dot3D PRIME, as you see here, green check boxes all the way down, is the complete package universal solution that will work with virtually any of our supported platforms. So this is the solution you'll be utilizing today if you're operating on a Windows or an Android device, because you do need to attach external hardware there. Or if you're operating on an iOS device and you want to mount your phone to a GNSS receiver, as we'll be showing here in some video clips today and talking about extensively, that is also a Prime feature. So simply, if you're utilizing just your phone and not really attaching any external hardware, or just your tablet, then that's where Pro might have you covered. But if you're looking to switch between platforms and give yourself access to all of the cameras and all of the GNSS capabilities, then that's where Dot3D PRIME comes in. And you note, as shown on screen here, to avoid confusion, that used to be called Dot3D Pro. It's now Prime. That's the top tier. And what used to be Pro for iOS is now just Pro. Dot3D Edit, no name change, no real functionality change there. That is our add-on option, typically deployed on a PC, a laptop, or a desktop, that allows you to do everything except scanning. So that feature set is actually determined based on what you were scanned with. So for example, if you use Dot3D PRIME and a Trimble DA2 receiver, and you captured your GNSS while scanning, that's still going to be available to you for optimization and processing in Dot3D Edit, if that was the license that you captured from. But it's essentially a convenience option that allows you to do everything you could do on your phone or tablet on your PC, except for scan. So next, we need to talk about some pricing changes that are coming with this new launch. As we build in more and more features, there are some price changes to be aware of, and we have those outlined here. So first, it's important to note that there are no price changes right now, but everything will be changing on the 1st of the year. So the prices you see here in white are what are currently available to you, and those can be locked in. So we certainly would encourage you to go ahead and take advantage of the best possible pricing before year's end. And that would be $300 a year for Dot3D Pro, $995 a year for Dot3D PRIME, and $120 a year for Dot3D Edit. And certainly make sure you reach out to point3D directly to take advantage of this special pricing before the end of the year. After the 1st of the year, there'll be some slight increases across the board, nothing major, but Dot3D Pro will be going up to $350 a year. Dot3D PRIME is only going up by $5, so no real change there for that top tier option. And Dot3D Edit will be increasing to $150 a year across the board. We also have what's called Dot3D Free, which is completely and totally free. And this is essentially a testing application, however. So it does allow you to scan as large as you want, capture as many scans as you want, kind of do your full proof of concept at any time using the free version across any of the 3 platforms. But what it doesn't allow you to do is export. So you're not going to be able to send your data anywhere. And it does have some limited options. For example, only one measurement, only one annotation. So it lets you test, check, and visualize and do everything you need to make sure that Dot3D can do what it needs for you. Maybe bring it to management when you're ready. And then you can upgrade to any of the other 3 options at any time. So covering those logistical changes, let's now dig into the feature sets themselves. So what have we built into this 6.0 release that can make an impact on you and your users? So first off, we have added compatibility with high accuracy GNSS receivers. As you see in parentheses here, DA2. The launch of Dot3D 6.0 adds support for the Trimble DA2 GNSS receiver. We'll have a slide on each of these features where I'll go into a little bit more detail on each of them. But that's the first component here that we've added, is the ability to utilize external GNSS or GPS hardware to reference and drift correct your Dot3D scans. Next, we have also added access to the internal phone or tablet GPS when available. So this is going to give you the ability to, similar to what you can do with a higher end solution, read in the GPS that's available in your device while scanning. And as we'll discuss in the slide on this topic, leverage that appropriately. Third, we have the ability to reference to global coordinate reference systems. So this certainly ties into the other 2 above. This has been a long requested feature. And we've now added the full lengthy set of global coordinate systems that you can save to directly. So whether you've utilized one of these GNSS technologies listed in item 1 or 2, or you simply have a known latitude, longitude that you're trying to reference to using the traditional coordinate referencing mechanism, that's now available to you across the world. We also have improved our coordinate system management workflow and added a new 3-point referencing option that allows you to reference not just to one point based on pulling your axes out of planes, but also you can reference to 3 points if you have 3 known coordinates that you simply want to select, say, the corners of a room. This is technically not new with 6.0, but it's such a big change in the last couple of years that we did want to take some time to highlight it. Number 5 here would be the ultra large single scene sizes that are now possible with Dot3D 5.0 and up. And we'll talk about a little bit more about what you can do there shortly. So with 6.0, we've also brought back some very exciting features and added certainly some more new ones in testing phase. Some of these features had existed in prior versions of Dot3D, but hadn't quite made the jump to our new 5.0 engine quite yet. So we're excited to bring back the 3D design comparison feature. It allows you to compare and align your point cloud data to a 3D model of the same space that was captured. We've also brought back the fill volume calculation tool that allows you to calculate the amount of material that it would take to fill in a regularly shaped hole in the ground. And then we brought a brand new feature in that is called 2D drawing. And it's a simple sketching feature that allows you to draw right on top of your Dot3D point cloud and export to a DXF that can be brought into CAD programs. That is in an alpha state, but I'm happy to show you what we can do today. And we would love to get some feedback on the ways that this can be utilized for you as we continue to improve it in the future. We've also like to take a moment to highlight some of our new in-app partnerships for floor planning and BIM services from MediaTask and BIMit, and we'll talk about that on a slide coming up. And we have streamlined our targeting workflows to make it easier than ever to reference survey control coordinates or known measurements between targets in your scene. And lastly, really ties into some of the other stuff we talked about, including the large scene capture. This is kind of a behind the scenes feature, but it's really, really important. We've added automatic scan recovery with Dot3D 5.0 and up. So, you know, sometimes these days you could be doing a scan for 25, 30 minutes. I mean, that's how large you can go if you want to with Dot3D. And the last thing anybody wants is to suddenly lose all that data because they accidentally answered a phone call or ran out of battery or something. So we've now built in some intelligent technology to automatically back up your Dot3D scan, not just after scanning, but periodically throughout the entire scan process. So first and foremost, let's talk about the GNSS/RTK receiver integration. So as you see on the video screen here, this is a new hardware option, first and foremost with the Trimble DA2 as shown on screen, that allows you to read in RTK or GNSS signals while scanning. Then you see the live screen here of the Dot3D application and the resulting data where you actually can see every single GNSS signal that was read to each frame of Dot3D capture. They're color coded here, showing you green are the highest quality RTK signals, and the orange and red were areas under foliage where the signal wasn't quite as accurate. And that's really important to note because that's a big piece of what we developed here is the ability to intelligently adjust for those and apply them relevantly to your optimization fully automatically. So you don't have to, you know, go in and decide what's going to be used for what. Dot3D does all that for you. It's going to give you the ability to reference your data immediately to those coordinate systems, but it's also in an example like this, you know, long stretch of scan, not properly loop closed. It's going to improve the accuracy of your scan too, because while a close quarter scan is probably always going to be more accurate inherently than your GNS, even your high accuracy GNSS would necessarily be. As you move across a long stretch of outdoor space, you can have an accumulation of drift in your Dot3D data. And today we have a lot of users who are accounting for that by surveying in targets and periodically referencing known coordinates to targets, which I will emphasize is still an excellent workflow and probably the most accurate way to work with Dot3D data. But not everybody has the luxury of putting down targets across their entire scene and surveying them in one by one before doing their scan. So this kind of gives you the next best thing. It allows you to freely walk through the entire space, and have your drift automatically adjusted for and tied into your high accuracy GNSS the entire time you're scanning. And then when you go to optimize, it is taken into account automatically. So if it had a really good signal, it's going to be applied as a constraint that will actually modify and improve your optimization. If it's an area where you went indoors or you went under something, it's probably not going to be taken into account during the optimization, but it is still going to be utilized to give you your coordinate reference system. So similar to that, that brings me to our next feature that was kind of birthed out of this, which is giving you access not only to these high accuracy external hardware solutions in Dot3D PRIME, but even in Dot3D Pro, you have access to your internal GPS or GNSS from your iPhone, your iPad, or Windows or Android devices that also have a GNSS signal or a location service that Dot3D can access. From the settings tab, you can turn on that location service and achieve a similar workflow to what we're doing with the DA2 or the, I actually should mention here, one thing I forgot to mention on the last slide is that we have one that is available now, which is the Trimble DA2, and one that's coming very soon, which is the Leica FLX 100. And we do have some more in the works too. So we're really excited to give you, whichever hardware you already have, we're hoping to add support for it in the near future to give you a lot of options. And on that note, hardware that you already have, you may already have access to a GNSS GPS signal from within your device. This, of course, is going to be much, much, much less accurate than the other stuff that we're talking about, but it still can be useful for certain use cases. So in this case, you're going to get a similar workflow where it automatically gets taken into account, but it's not going to be utilized to change the optimization at all. We know that Dot3D is going to be more accurate than a 5-meter level accurate iOS GPS signal. That being said, it does give you the ability to automatically put your data into that coordinate system. So it's going to take into account all of these coordinates that are read into Dot3D during scanning and apply those as an export option in terms of your user coordinate system. And I'll show that in Dot3D in a little bit. So last, in terms of the geospatial improvements here, to go along with all three of the features that were just mentioned, we've added access to a wide range of global coordinate systems for 3D export. So whether you utilize any of these internal or external GNSS RTK solutions, or if you just simply are trying to reference your latitude, longitude to a known coordinate, you can now search for a coordinate reference system, and you have the whole list of many, many global coordinate systems to just select from a dropdown and give yourself exactly what you need. And this can allow your data to plop into place, where it belongs in the world, and any of your geospatial applications you might want to bring your Dot3D 3D data into. As mentioned earlier, we've also added a new option to the coordinate system management that allows you to utilize a 3-point selection method of referencing your scans. So by default, this has been a feature we've had in Dot3D for a very long time. You can set a coordinate system or simply an origin point by tapping a single point, say the corner of the room, and then holding on the floor and the wall to pull your axes directly out of those planes. But you don't always necessarily have perfect planes available to pull out of. So this gives you the ability, if you have 3 known coordinates, to just reference to those instead. So the 3 corners of a room or something like that. Obviously, even better than that is when you have target coordinates to reference to, but you can do it either way now. So let's talk a little bit about ultra large single scene capture capabilities. So this has really been a game changer for us. And, I wouldn't want to misrepresent to say that, this means Dot3D is the one-stop shop for every single massive, enormous football stadium size scan you ever want to do, because that's not the case. There's still, the right tool for the right job. But that being said, the limitations are gone. So you're not running out of space trying to squeeze in a scan. You're not trying to do, break it up into pieces because of the limitations of the hardware or the software. There are technically no limits anymore, other than your battery life or your legs, how far you're going to walk. But there are technically no software limitations in terms of how large you can go with Dot3D. But you obviously want to always try and close the loop whenever possible, or if you can't close the loop, which means start and finish the same area, then you should always try and have some control added as much as possible. So that could be survey control target points throughout the entire scan. It could be reference measurements to really tie down your accuracy. That's going to give you the best results on these very, very large scans. That being said, this example that you see on screen here today was really just 3 April tags at the start point, and I finished back at them. So you can get some really impressive results. But if you want to guarantee the accuracy to a certain level for this large of a scan, you do want some level of control. We're excited to bring the 3D design comparison feature back. This has been a particularly popular feature in the shipbuilding and marine world, but it can apply to a lot of different use cases. And simply what it allows you to do is load a 3D model in an OBJ format into Dot3D, get to this split screen view that you see on screen, register with the tap of your finger or the click of the mouse, in this case to 3 surfaces, but it can also be 2 pipes. It could also be 3 points, but you just tap the same surface in each of the scan and the model, or the same pipe, etc. And then it'll register those directly on top of each other. That gives you 2 benefits. One, it gives you a new export option in terms of a coordinate reference system. So if this is a 3D model that's a piece of a much larger model, now you have the option to export your point cloud in that same coordinate system as the much larger model. It also gives you the ability to perform a heat map analysis and compare the differences between the as-built conditions in the 3D scan versus the as-designed conditions in the 3D model, which of course oftentimes don't match up as necessarily as you expect they would. We've also brought back the fill volume calculation tool. So this feature allows you to select the ground plane and then draw a polygon around an irregularly shaped hole, such as the pothole that you see on the screen here, and then calculate to a set threshold in terms of how much material you want to fill above grade, the amount of material that it would take to fill that hole. So quite simply, there's several use cases for filling irregularly shaped holes, and this allows you to quickly and easily calculate the amount of material you're going to need, whether it be asphalt, concrete, etc. This feature is in alpha, so it is something that is not technically release ready at this stage, but we were able to open it up to our users as a testing feature. So this is available in all versions of Dot3D 6.0.3, and we encourage you to play around with it, and please feel free to provide us some feedback. This is an exciting step in the direction of allowing you to draw 2D drawings or 2D CAD even directly on top of your Dot3D point cloud. It is a rudimentary initial step. We do want to clarify. It's not going to be like you're suddenly, have all your CAD capabilities available to you in Dot3D, but you can do things like you see on screen here today, such as sketch out the area of something that's going to need to be installed, or sketch out the building footprint, which is what we're doing in this case on a municipal building example, in terms of a 2D polyline, and then export that to a DXF file that can be brought into different CAD applications. We're also really excited to share our direct integration and partnerships with MediaTask and BIMit for both 2D floor planning and 3D BIM modeling services. You can access this feature from the floor planning / BIM button directly within Dot3D, and it will take you through the steps to send your Dot3D scan over to these service providers for a price quote and a rapid conversion to either a 2D architectural floor plan or several tiers of BIM model. And I say several tiers because they do a really good job of breaking it down for you. If you're looking for a small scan of an empty residential space, that's going to be a much quicker and easier modeling job for them. So that's a lower price point. If you're looking for a large scale scan of a super complicated piping system through a large mechanical room, that's going to be the industrial level, and that's going to change things. So even something as simple as furniture versus no furniture all gets to be specified easily as you go through the step-by-step process. And they're partnered with us and prepared and ready to accept Dot3D scans and give you an accurate representation of those in terms of a 3D BIM model or a 2D floor plan. So we're excited about those partnerships, and you can take yourself to both of these pages you see on screen from right within Dot3D by going to that button. With 5.0 and 6.0, we've also continued to streamline our targeting workflows. We have found that more and more of our most successful customers are utilizing survey control targeting and or reference distance targeting to get the most out of their Dot3D data. So it's never been easier to tap on two targets and reference a tape measurement or a laser measurement between them. It's also never been easier to implement survey control. So if you have surveyed in the coordinates of each of these targets, you can pop those right into Dot3D and have your data both accurately improved and directly referenced to the coordinate system of those tags. Lastly, an important feature to highlight, I talked about it a little bit earlier on the summary slide, is the automatic scan recovery. So if you take a phone call as shown in the example on screen here, if your battery dies, if you push your scene capture really far and something goes wrong, you're no longer at risk of losing the whole thing. We have what's called an RCV file that's now created periodically throughout the scan, and that allows you to recover your data. So this is huge, and it really allows our users to work much more confidently in some of these more pushing the limit type applications that we're now in some ways encouraging, because we are doing a lot more with just an iPhone or an iPad these days. So before we switch over to wrap things up and take a lot of the questions that I'm sure have been coming through, I do have a sample scan here loaded up in Dot3D Edit on my desktop, and I'll walk you through some of these features that we just talked about. So here we have an example of a scan where, in particular, some of this GPS and GNSS capabilities might be particularly relevant. You'll notice that the reason for that is it's a relatively large scan. This is a really quick example. It could certainly be much larger, but a relatively large scan without proper loop closure. So think walking the length of a trench, walking a length of highway for a crash scene. Those are the kind of scenarios where this really resonates, or just in general outdoor utility applications where you want to have this data, whether it's being utilized for accuracy improvement or not, to be referenced to the right coordinate system of that address that you're at, of that manhole that you're at, so it pops into the right place on the map. In this case, this was scanned very quickly in one walk with just an iPhone using Dot3D. It is a stretch of sidewalk and walkway with an April tag at each corner point. So if I was relying solely on internal GNSS, then these April tags, they're not really doing anything for me. Where these April tags do help me is when I survey them in and I have survey control for the tag. So it's something to always be reminded of. April tags are helpful if you loop over them multiple times, such as the beginning and the end of your scan, if you reference measurements between them, or if you reference the survey control coordinates of them. So in this case, I prepared a survey control file for the tags using global coordinates. So you can see here what that file looks like, and that gets loaded right into Dot3D before optimization. To save time here on the session, I've actually already optimized this scan, but it only took 2 to 3 minutes to optimize here on my desktop, and it might be even faster on your iPad. Let's talk about each of these features one by one. The GNSS tab is now available up here. If you've utilized it, you will see that button pop up. To turn that feature on, you go to Settings, GNSS and Geo Settings. And I'm actually not seeing the setting I wanted to show here because I'm running a Dot3D Edit license. But within GNSS and Geo Settings, you can turn on the Trimble DA2 if that's something you're utilizing, or you can turn on what's called your iOS location service or your Windows location service if you have a signal that you're utilizing from your device internally. That's what we had here in this case turned on during the scan. So if I tap on the GNSS tab, I see every single piece of GPS signal that was fed into Dot3D while scanning. Of course, this is that 5-meter level accuracy typically, so this is not going to be improving the quality of the scan, but it is going to be referencing my coordinate system and is collectively applied to give you that new coordinate export option when moving forward with your Dot3D data. if I had, so in this case, you know, I didn't have to do anything before optimization. If I had utilized the DA2 or one of our future external hardware options, in that case, you perform a fit to your GNSS before you optimize. So you'd want to go to this GNSS tab, and you'll be prompted to before you optimize your scan. If you're just turning on the iOS location service like I did here, you don't have to worry about doing anything before optimization. You can just take a look at your results here after, or you can just, you know, move right on to your export options when you're ready. So we'll touch base on that feature next. So if I go to save as or export, we see this new option now automatically available to me. You can change your coordinate system if the default isn't what you want to be operating in, and select, you know, all over the world, whatever coordinate system that you're looking for, you should be able to find. If you can't, just let us know. That covers most of the GNSS functionality. If you are going to be manually setting your coordinate system, this is where you can find that new set 3-point option that allows you to set 3 different points. Or also new is the ability to reference directly to a latitude, longitude here in Dot3D and apply your coordinate system there. So if you haven't utilized one of these other options, that still also allows you to reference any particular point globally. The design comparison feature is back and available right here. I do not have a 3D model of this stretch of sidewalk, so I'm not going to show that here today, but that's where you can find it. The fill volume calculation tool is available in the measure tab. We have fill volume here now next to distance. I don't think we have a particular pothole to show here, but let's see. There might be a little bit of a hole there, or we can just kind of simulate the capability. So you press and hold on the ground, but let's use this as our example. Pretend there's a pothole right here, and we get our direct top-down view. And then we are going to create a polygon just by clicking and holding or tapping and holding around that area. And then press proceed when you're happy with the area that's been selected. And then you can toggle the level that you want to be setting it at, and then see your fill volume in your specified units right here. So that's a unique and useful feature for certain applications, as is the new drawing feature. So under Edit, Draw, we now have the ability to draw right on top of our Dot3D point cloud. Similarly, it'll have you select a level floor or ground plane, and then just start drawing using this polyline feature. So if I wanted to draw a piece of sidewalk here, I just tap, 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 and create that very, very easily from right here within Dot3D. We look forward to seeing how this gets utilized in its current state, you know, for building footprints, for simple sketching of crime scenes or area calculations. And we also look forward to improvements to this feature in the future to make it even more useful to you. You can turn off your scene view in the top right here to see what you're actually going to be exporting. So this is your simple DXF drawing, and that can come right out of Dot3D now. Our CAD/BIM button up here is where you can access your 3D BIM or 2D floor plan conversion services, as mentioned earlier. And our targeting tab is where you can access survey control targeting, reference distance measurements, etc. Typically, you want to find yourself in the targeting tab before you optimize. So this is where you would go in and load a control file, such as the one I showed earlier. And it's actually already been applied to this scan if you have a control file to reference. I'll show you an example of what that file would look like here. Or if you were just referencing known measurements, it's as simple as clicking on one target and the next, and then you just tell Dot3D before optimization. That's exactly how far that is from center point to center point, which is certainly, you know, both of those are great best practices when you have the luxury. I think that pretty much covers it in terms of my rapid fire read through of these features and live demonstration on this example scan that was captured here today. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Josh, and Julie, and we'd be happy to start taking some of the questions that you guys have been passing throughout the session.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate that. So I'm going to start firing off some of these questions that we have up here. First off, start off with, do you have a list of hot swappable cameras that are capable or compatible, and some of the pros and cons of those cameras?
Yes, we do. We actually have a couple lists that are really useful for exactly that. That's probably on top of what we already spoke to in the session. Be better addressed for me to directly send those links to the asker of that question. But we do have a couple out there that are comparing the options in terms of small scale, large scale, indoor, outdoor, weight, size, form factor. There's all sorts of things that can be taken into account. So yeah, we'll definitely get that over to you.
Perfect. Alrighty. So your GNSS capability only for Apple device. Isn't it possible to use the mock location with Android devices in order to use the GNSS chipset?
So yeah, the external hardware support, today being the Trimble DI2, that is iOS only. The ability to leverage internal signals for positioning only, but not drift correction, that is available. I don't want to say any device because there's so many devices out there. We haven't necessarily tested them all, but that should be available for most devices across all three platforms to leverage that. So if it's inside your device you're trying to take advantage of, then that is available across platforms. If it's the external hardware that you're trying to utilize today, that is an iOS specific solution.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Are other RTK units supported, like MLID?
So as mentioned, we are working on integration with several others. And the first one that I know is very close to release is the Leica FLX 100. But we expect there will be more coming, so please stay tuned on that front.
All right, we got a few more questions here. How can I set the EPSG that I'm using without the DA2? That's the first question.
I think I may have covered that in the demo at the end. So it can be set utilizing the traditional coordinate system referencing tab, or it can be auto set if you turn on your internal location service. So either of those ways. And then when you go to export, you just go to that drop down.
Gotcha. Okay, number 2 question on that one. Is it possible to optimize the app for larger outdoor scenes, as currently the app crashes on about 1,200 scenes, which is about 200 M2 on the iPhone 15 Pro?
Yeah, so certainly shouldn't be the case. We've seen scans much larger than that. We've seen billion point scans. But obviously pushing limits outdoors is part of the reason why we built in that recovery feature. So you should have yourself covered there. But if you're running into that regularly or you're having issues with your recovery files, definitely let us know and we'll look into it. We are, live testing and improving this app. It's part of what makes it, as powerful as it is, based on user feedback. So we're building in intelligent improvements to our optimization and our tracking based on any sort of problem scene sets that pop up. They're becoming less and less frequent. But as we push larger and larger scene sizes, those things can still happen. So the short answer is give 6.0.3 a try if you haven't tried recently. And my guess is you'll see some improvements already. One thing to note is we've added some other features in that can sometimes overload the file size, such as increasing your frame spacing. These are all in advanced settings, or adding, automatic high-res photo capture. Just make sure to turn those off unless you really need them, and that should help as well.
Does this mean we can push 4,000 plus frames while using this?
It does. It does. most use cases are still falling in the 1 to 3,000 frame realm from what we see. But yeah, no, you absolutely can. We're seeing some, large scale indoor scans of things like, not an entire shopping mall, but large stretches of a shopping mall, a long trench line, very large crash scenes. So we're seeing an entire historical palace in Portugal. So we're seeing some examples of how it can be done. But as with anything, test it, see how it goes. If it doesn't deliver, let us know, because we are aiming to improve, how you can do these really large scenes, and we already have. But yeah, go for it.
Any feedback is going to be helpful, so we encourage all of that. Another question we have is there any benefits for newer iPhones like the 12 Pro from the LiDAR that's included in there?
So short answer is yes, but with the caveat being that the technology itself, to our knowledge, has not changed. The hardware, is the same, but in general, we just recommend staying up to date whenever possible. So that's kind of a yes if you have the opportunity. If you don't, it's not a big deal. So there's no like drastic improvement, but we do see some kind of individual reports of a little bit better performance on the latest devices, without an exact reason from Apple behind that, other than that they want you to stay up to date. So we do encourage the latest model, but it's even on in-house, we don't necessarily have all the latest models. So update when you can, or if you can.
Gotcha. Got a few more questions here. DA2 or the Leica Flex be used for the iPad, or is it just iPhone?
I believe that both can be used with either. And in general, I think the iPhone works a little bit more nicely. But the intent is for both to be usable with either. But yeah, so either one.
Gotcha. For ultra large scenes, ultra large scenes, what is the best way to complete multiple scans and merge them together for comprehensive scans?
Sure. So the best way is normally to utilize the append feature. So that's technically not, quote unquote separate scans. That's going back, relocalizing, and adding right back into the same scan. Given that we don't have the same scene size limits that we used to, that's usually the way to go. If we're talking like ultra large, like we actually have seen an example scan of an entire, miles and miles of waterfront of an urban waterfront in Japan, captured, believe it or not, using just Dot3D, that relied on survey control. So that if you're going to do something that large, you're probably going to need targets and a way to reference those targets. So a GNSS receiver pole is really something we can't recommend enough. So we're talking a lot about the live feed GNSS capabilities today, which are exciting and powerful. But the ability to use these same sorts of technologies to just survey and coordinate targets, I can't emphasize enough how great that workflow is too. So it doesn't even have to, say you're using an MLIT or one of these other solutions today, definitely test that out. Go capture your coordinates, create a control file, and utilize that. So that's the recommended way. You can also, essentially simulate that between Dot3D scans, where you pull the target coordinates out of one scan and you apply them into an overlapping scan to register them based on targets. But in most cases, that's not really necessary. You should either be using the append feature or referencing to a survey control file.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know you might have mentioned this one before, but can you do inverse of the pothole and measure a pile of dirt and rock?
Not yet, but I think it's a feature request that I myself have put in with our development team. So hopefully we'll get that added at some point. But right now it is actually the way that the technology works. It does have to be a hole.
Another good question here. Do I need 2 licenses to run on my desktop and my tablet?
Yes. Yes. The only reason I hesitate there is that we may be offering some more migration options, floating license type options in the relatively near future. But as it stands today, yes, it is all standalone licenses, and it is priced as such. So that's why your iPhone is only a $300 license, and your desktop is only $120. So that total all-in cost is still only $420 a year. And I expect that the Prime licenses in the future will be where you will see some more flexibility in terms of logging in and out across different devices. So stay tuned for that. Today, it's worth noting by request, if you're utilizing Dot3D PRIME with a DPI kit or an Intel RealSense, and you also want to equip your iPhone to try out some of these new capabilities, you already have an iPhone Pro. You can request a complimentary iOS license to go with that top tier Prime option if you want to, have all the options at your disposal. So that's an option that we're making available by request, and in the future, it'll probably be that you can switch between devices if you're using a Prime license.
So it looks like we're running out of time here, so I'm going to ask a few more questions, and then we can add any finishing notes. Will there be any possibility to use layers for a 2D drawing tool?
That's a good request. As mentioned, it's really an alpha feature today, so that's not there right now. But I certainly assume as this feature evolves over time, those are the sorts of things that will be coming in. So that's a good request.
Gotcha. So it looks like we are running out of time. I want to see if you have any additional notes, Chris, or if anybody on our side has anything else to add, just to finish this out.
No, that covers it for me. I look forward to looking through these questions in more detail myself, any that we didn't get to, and making sure that we follow up with you. And I really just want to thank you guys for putting this together. We look forward to seeing and sharing the recording. And please do reach out directly to point3D for all your Dot3D needs, especially here in the US.
Yeah, I do want to mention, if we did not get to your questions, feel free to reach out and we can gladly get those answered for y'all. Really appreciate that y'all joined us on this webinar, and we want to thank Chris again. Thank you again for showing us what the new features are and everything that you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. It was a pleasure. Talk soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody.